Welcome to Football Podcast with Brandon White.
Rob Thackrey.
Here to discuss the offseason draft and free agency of the NFC North, home to the perennial contending Green Bay Packers, who have been, like most off seasons, super quiet, super low-key this year.
I mean, they did what the Packers generally tend to do, is they re-sign the players that they target as useful to them, and they don't spend a massive amount of money on re-signing those people. And then if they feel like it's necessary, they may go out and get a few key components. But, I mean, that's just kind of what Ted Thompson does. It's how they've been doing this for God knows how long. It's just the Packer way, it seems, and it's similar. You notice that a lot of good teams tend to do this too, is that they don't go out and spend a lot of money in free agency. They're not like trying to plug holes. A lot of it's through that farm system. So like Pittsburgh Steelers, New England Patriots, Green Bay Packers, the Oakland Raiders are now starting to do this. But like just to name a few, Kansas City Chiefs have been real good about this the last couple of years. But the good teams that tend to stay good long are teams that draft well and develop well and then pay those players.
Atlanta too.
Atlanta's now doing this because they've had a couple decent drafts and have retained a couple of key components from other regimes. But yeah, I mean that's just, I guess, business as usual as far as free agency, as far as the draft for them. Also home to the Minnesota Vikings, the Chicago Bears, and the Detroit Lions, all of which I think we probably will have different opinions on going forward, other than maybe the Bears. I think we might agree on the Bears. Just being a little stretch there, but I mean, I don't think we see good stuff in the pipe for them.
I'm super excited for Mitchell Trubisky, UNC great, but no, the prospects aren't good for the Bears. But we'll get to the Bears later. One thing I want to start off by pointing out, which I think is very interesting,
is that every time we do a division, tragedy strikes that division. Literally, Houston is underwater right now because we did the AFC South. That's how bad it is.
Something we've noticed this with our offseason, and we haven't really mentioned this in depth on this podcast yet. But
Zeke got suspended after we did the East.
Yeah, like every time we do a division, within like a week or so of us doing it, some crazy shit happens in that division. I mean, yeah, there's one less magician in the NFC East now. I think that's the craziest thing.
I don't like that.
So yeah, it's funny because we're trying to like prep everything going into the season, and then all this stuff keeps happening and kind of erases what we've said to some degree. Which I mean, I guess it's good. We'll go into week one making predictions, and suddenly our predictions are already going to be different after the cut downs, as well as all the suspensions, injuries, hurricanes.
Oh yeah, I mean at work, because I said the Eagles. I think I said both the Eagles and the Titans are going to be 10-6 teams. And then I actually did it for both the Titans and the Eagles at work, just because it was like a weird bet fun thing that we were doing, and I just like went through and quick was like win loss for both of them, and they both ended up being 9-7. So I mean, even day to day, how we feel on teams could change slightly. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it's another thing that's interesting is I feel like every year the Packers are 10-6, and I feel like every year they lose in the NFC Championship.
I mean, it's what perennial contenders means, Brandon.
Yeah.
I don't know if you understand words or not, but those are what those words mean.
I know. It's just that specific record and that specific loss. Like, I feel like every fucking year the Packers make it to the NFC Championship and lose.
They're
on
good.
A 10-6 record.
They're good.
They're good enough.
They're good.
I mean, I keep predicting them to win, or at least go to the Super Bowl, and they keep blue-balling me on that.
Yeah, so they were 10-6 last year, ended up winning what would have been, I don't necessarily want to call it a play-in game with the Lions, because both of them were in. It was more of just a seeding game.
Yeah.
But they ended up winning the play-in / win the division for the 4 or the 6 seed game at the end of the year. Finishing 6-2 at home and 4-4 away. Obviously, that was good for first in the NFC North. Like you said, they ended up losing to the Falcons in the NFC Championship pretty handily. And from what it looked like they had expended most of their juice the week before against the Cowboys when they won like 34-31. So, I mean, it was one of those things where I just don't think they had the steam to really pull it out, as well as the Packers being just decimated with injuries, losing a couple people on the offensive line. And there's only so much that Aaron Rodgers can do when you give up 44 points, you know?
Yeah.
Like, he can only come back so much. And we all saw that the Falcons' defense is good through 3.5 quarters. So,
well, it's interesting, too, because you're taking a team here that has, I think that we can agree, the best quarterback in the NFL now. I mean, he's not the GOAT like Thomas, but he's also not like 1,000 like Thomas.
I guess, yeah, I was like, if you're going to put a gun to my head and say, hey, you got to pick one quarterback now that's in the league. You can't go like legends or people that aren't in the league right now. You got to pick one. You got to build a team around him. I'm probably going to pick Aaron Rodgers just because he has a little bit more time. He's a little bit more mobile. Tends to be a little more accurate.
5 years of him.
Yeah. Whereas if I pick Tom Brady, I'm getting 3 good years max. No, that's what I'm saying. Like top end max. I mean, with Aaron, we're going to get a little bit more, and you're still going to get elite production.
You could be like overshooting it or undershooting it with Tom Brady.
Yeah,
3 years like that. That's just like grab a fucking number. Like, all right, that's how many years Tom Brady has left.
It's 1 and 1A at this particular moment of the recording of this podcast.
Yeah.
It's 1 and 1A in my opinion.
Interestingly enough, because the Packers were 6-2 at home and 4-4 away, another one of those teams that tends to be a little bit better at home than on the road. You know, what if they had hosted that game with the Falcons? Probably still would have lost to the Falcons, but I think it probably would have been a closer game. Just interesting thing of note. They did have a few notable departures, as is tradition for the Packers. Safety Micah Hyde, who left for the Bills.
Man, he left when he thought they weren't going to trust the process still. He can't Anquan Bolden his way out of this.
Right.
He left and he was like, man, they're going to compete. I feel like there should be a clause in people's contracts for when, like, you go there and you're like, they like pay you a lot of money and, like, you obviously want to go there to win.
Yeah.
And then they just totally shit the bed. And you just have to Joe Thomas that shit. You just have to just take that L.
Joe Thomas has been trusting the process for like 15 years.
Take that L and hold it in your chest. Because, I mean, granted, there are players who go to teams that pay them and don't they go there specifically to money. They go there specifically for the money. They go there not to win. I'm not saying Micah Hyde did that, but if he did, I would feel kind of bad for him because he's like, oh shit, I'm going from playoffs, you know, all the year, like every time I've been in the playoffs every year, to the largest playoff drought in current NFL history.
Current sports history.
So
they have the longest drought of every major league in the United States.
17, no.
It's 18
17,
years.
18 years, somewhere in that range. Yeah, so I mean, I just putting that out there. I feel like he should be able to cut and run if he so chooses.
Yeah, tell me about it. You got guard TJ Lang, who is now with the Lions. A little bit of that divisional incest that we like to talk about every week. Center J.C. Treader is now a Brown. Then, again, the Browns doing a lot of interesting things.
Is T.J. Lang a Targaryen?
Yeah, T.J. Lang is definitely a Targaryen.
Okay, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. Although he's a Lion now, so maybe he'd be a Lannister. They also do a little bit of that incest stuff, too. You got tight end Jared Cook, who is now a Raider. Running back Eddie Lacy. Fat Eddie is a Seahawk now. Defensive end Dayton Jones is a Viking. More incest. Defensive end Julius Peppers finally got tired of the NFC North and went home to the NFC South. He's a Panther once more. He's going to finish his career out down there, we could assume at this point.
He's 38, I hope so. I don't need him running after people at like 42 and still being as good as he is.
Yeah. And then, of course, running back Kristen Michael is just gone. Into the void.
The Awakening is on IR in Indianapolis right now. As of right now, that's where he is. Yeah. He could be in like Japan or something by tomorrow.
He doesn't even know.
Yeah, no. I mean, he could be claimed off waivers for like the Mexico Football League. I have no idea. He was playing arena football. I have no clue.
Oh man. So arrivals, again, Packers aren't big on signing free agents, but when they do, they usually get one or two pretty big ones. They picked up tight end Martellus Bennett, who was a Patriot last year.
Third team in 3 years.
One of those things that you have to ask: is he a journeyman? Is he a Darrelle Revis, or is is he just out there like a hired gun, or is he just a shitty person because he's a Bennett brother and teams don't want him around after a year? Who's to say? They also picked up another tight end, Lance Kendricks. Jared Cook left. They have a little bit of a hole at tight end, so they decided to sign a couple of them. Cornerback Devon House, guard Jari Evans, and defensive tackle Ricky Jean-Francois, who just has a fun name to say.
Yeah, from the Redskins, just shoring up some tackle depth. They re-signed Nick Perry, who, apart from Clay Matthews, is basically their only pass rush. And when Clay Matthews only plays like between 12 and 14 games a year now, he's basically the guy for pass rush there. They re-signed Don Barclay, Jordan Tripp, Brett Good, and the punter Jacob Schoen. Don Barclay actually ended up starting in place of somebody who got injured last year, so signed him for cheap. Ended up getting a good deal. He'll shore up their line. They didn't have a first round pick, so round 2 they actually picked 33rd overall was their first pick. They went with Kevin King, cornerback out of Washington, who ended up playing across from Sidney Jones, who ended up going a little bit later in the second round. Interesting pickup. They had a couple other cornerbacks on the, they had a couple cornerbacks on the board at that moment, but I still think this was a good choice. They needed to pick up somebody because Sam Shields was basically on IR for all of last year with a concussion. He may not play again, period. Micah Hyde ended up leaving, and he ended up being a pretty big portion of their defense last year in terms of versatility. So they definitely needed to get somebody in there in the secondary and at least provide some competition. Round 2, Josh Jones, safety out of NC State, like we said, had to replace some of that secondary. It's no secret that the Green Bay defense is their weak spot, particularly their secondary. It's just the kind of scheme that they run down there. They're really zone blitzy. It's almost like it's not Dick LeBeau. I'm completely Dom Capers. Dom Capers runs a system where it's completely zone blitzy. A lot of the times you are going to end up leaving your 4 or 5, depending on if you're running your base set, a nickel, or a dime set, in terms of cornerbacks or defensive backs on the field. But they do a lot of weird scheme shit that ends up needing to have versatile defensive backs back there and really weird pass rushing people like Clay Matthews and Nick Perry. So they needed to get some depth back in that secondary. Montrevious Adams, D-tackle out of Auburn. This guy's 310 pounds, but ended up running a 4.8. So he's actually pretty fast.
That's a fast fat boy.
Yeah, that is a really big dude. And he can run really fast. So, he's also, along with the fact that they ended up signing Ricky Jean-Francois just for depth, they're going to shore up that middle.
Yeah,
of the
they're
defense,
planning to get off the ball and
get up the
middle.
No, even though he's going to be playing an off-center nose tackle-ish type position, more than likely, they could also run, because like I said, Dom Capers does some really weird shit where they'll switch between 4-3 and 3-4 base sets. So this is a guy that can play off guard and rush the passer if need be from a tackle spot. Vince Beagle, linebacker out of Wisconsin. Really interesting because he was one that played opposite of T.J. Watt when they were looking at him. But T.J. Watt actually ended up going, if I'm not mistaken, in the end of the first round, where this guy, who, despite being there for 5 years and the Watt brother only being there for 2, had similar production at the end of his career. So if they're able to get, and you've seen what T.J. Watt's done, at least in the first preseason game where he got 2 sacks on 3 plays at the beginning of a drive. If guys are able to give them what they think that they would be able to get similarly out of T.J. Watt and he win at the end of the first round, I think this is a great pickup because that's exactly what they're going to try and use him for, is for pass rush depth, which is, like I was saying, something that they don't have, especially with Clay Matthews being oft injured, if not having to play a middle linebacker role, which he's really not suited for just because of the scheme of the defense and other holes that they have had before.
Yeah, this has been a weakness they've been trying to address for what seems like about 8 years now.
Linebacking core depth?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not. It's been something that they've been able to get by with, but they've lost versatility out of the backfield, so they're losing in-box defenders like Charles Woodson, like Micah Hyde, that were like able to kind of do a little bit of everything in terms of the back seven. So when they're losing that, they have to get better in their respective spots, and that's what they're hoping to do by just shoring up these positions. Jamal Williams, running back out of BYU, he's actually, from what I understand, he's historically their leading rusher, so he's actually their school holder in terms of rushing yards. So he's a little bit explosive. And it's not, anything that should be surprising to anybody who paid attention to football last year, but the Green Bay Packers don't have a backfield. Like, they just don't have a running back backfield. So this guy is something that they hope to bring in because, one, Eddie Lacy is gone, and their main running back is a wide receiver that they're transitioning back to a running back. So, I mean, he's still pretty small in terms of a running back. He's more of like a pass-catching scat back, Ty Montgomery is. This guy is probably going to be more of what they are expecting if they end up going with a change of pace. He can still catch passes out of the backfield. He's still shifty, but he's definitely more of an in-between-the-tackles guy than Ty Montgomery is for sure. So this will be interesting. D'Angelo Yancey, wide receiver out of Purdue. They seem to always pick these guys out of nowhere and have them come in like there's a guy named Geronimo on their team that ended up having like a 2-touchdown game last year. That's what I'm saying. They just pick these kind of like no-name guys out like the Patriots do and like turn them into superstars overnight. So, I mean, you might see this guy just completely blow up in a year or two and be like the next Randall Cobb for no exact reason because nobody had them. Another running back, Aaron Jones out of UTEP. Kofi Amicha, tackle out of Southern Florida, and Devontae Mays, another running back out of Utah State. We get it, Ted Thompson. I think we understand. You guys need running backs.
Yeah.
They took 3 running backs in the last 5 picks they had.
I mean, that's a lot.
It's a lot of running backs.
And I mean, granted,
they don't have any running backs. They have Ty Montgomery. That's it, really.
And I mean, the 5th and especially the 7th are
James Starks. They
released.
They released Eddie Lacy. Christine Michael is on IR with the Colts, like we said. So every running back that they had that started as a running back on their roster last year is gone.
That's a lot of missing running backs. Maybe they should check Indianapolis or Tokyo.
So overall, I mean, looking at them, it's kind of hard to say because the Packers are so consistent in what they do. I mean, even last year, where I think both of us at different points during the season thought the sky might have been falling for them, regardless of whether you think the league was trying to put them over. They ended up winning their division from behind after a pretty big collapse by the Lions because they ended up losing 3 games at the end of the season in a row, including that quote unquote play-in game to the Packers. So combined with that and the fact that they just went off and won like 4 or 5 like games straight right near the end there, 10-6 is about what you normally expect from them. I'm trying to pull my thing up unsuccessfully.
Well, I got mine, and this is going to sound a bit absurd, but I do feel a lot better about their defense after this offseason and their draft. Initially, I had them going 13-3, and then I actually looked at their schedule and thought about it, and actually they could go 15-1. Do I think that's going to happen? No, I actually do think 13-3 now is more realistic, all things considered after the preseason and seeing other teams. but still, that's better than the 10-6 that they'll probably inevitably be, just like every year. Incidentally, I also have them going to the Super Bowl against the Patriots this year, probably.
Now that I've found my little prediction thingy that I had in the bottom crevice of my computer, it seemed. I have them going 11-5, 4-2 in the division. Granted, obviously, like we've said, things have changed, and we did this before training camp, so I'm sticking to this as far as what we're doing here for the preseason episodes. But this is more than likely going to change. Not specifically with the Packers, just in a general sense. But yeah, 11-5, 4-2 in the division. That's actually, as far as my predictions, was only good enough for the 3 seed, with the Seahawks and the Falcons taking the 1 and 2 respectively. But they still won their division by 2 games at least. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to come out hot this year. For whatever reason, he last year just didn't seem to have it for the beginning part of the year. They lost their center. They ended up losing somebody on like their right guard as well due to injuries. So their line should be better. If they could get any semblance of a running game going, they're going to be scary. But even with Aaron Rodgers just basically dinking and dunking his way down the field via quick slants, like out routes, running back, like flank routes, they're still able to get it. I mean, this is last year with Jordy Nelson being a relatively unknown producer coming back from an injury. Jordy's fine. Randall Cobb is fine. They've still got that plethora of Devontae Adams is another one who's their third. They've still got a plethora of other wide receivers that they're able to pick and choose from in terms of who has the big day, it seems. So if they're able to get any sort of semblance on the run game, they can easily put up 30 to 35, and it's going to be hard to outscore them when they're putting up stuff like that. So I think just based on that alone, they can win double-digit games. The difference between them going deep in the playoffs and winning a Super Bowl is going to be their defense, and I just don't see it. It looks objectively worse than it did last year. You know, Dom Capers can only do so much to hide what's happening as far as like a scheme and them losing potential big contributors. And unless they hit on 2 or 3 of these guys that they picked, especially the first 2 picks that they had, 2 and 3, the cornerback and the safety, unless they hit and they contribute immediately, they could possibly lose the division because, I mean, the Lions aren't that far behind in terms of what they're able to do, and you can argue that they're a more complete team. They just don't have that, like, explosiveness. They don't have Aaron Rodgers, basically, is the difference between them and the Lions.
Moving right on to the Lions, 2016 they went 9-7, which was good for second in the NFC North and the 6th seed. Of course, that last game of the season, like you mentioned earlier, was the game to decide who won the division and who was the 6th seed. They lost in the divisional round to the Seahawks, 26-6. I mean, at least it wasn't a shutout, but that's not much of a football game. The Seahawks and Lions worlds apart in regards to what they're capable of. Notable departures, tackle Riley Reif signed with the Vikings. There it is again. Guard Larry Warford is now a Saint. The defensive tackle Stephen Charles is a Jaguar now. Wide receiver Anquan Bolden went home, like not to a team, like he just went home.
Just took his cleats and went home.
He signed with the Bills for about 3 days, and then the Bills decided to trust the process, and he decided that he didn't trust that. So he is now retired. One of my all-time favorite players. I've always loved Anquan Bolden. Sad to see him go. Wide receiver Andre Roberts.
Mostly a returner.
Yeah. Andre Roberts, now a Falcon. And quarterback Dan Orlovsky, the missing man, the man who we weren't sure where he was last week.
The answer was Scott Tolzien.
Yeah.
If anybody was yelling at us.
Yeah.
Nobody added us, but Scott Tolzien is Andrew Luck's backup, not Dan Orlovsky.
Former Green Bay Packer Scott Tolzien. Dan Orlovsky is now a Ram, and linebacker DeAndre Levy is just not doing anything.
He was cut because he went on IR last year after coming back from a knee injury, re-injured the same thing. They released him, and he's now saying that he shouldn't have been cleared by the team doctors because he wasn't ready, and that's why he re-injured his stuff. we'll never know. It's possible because he's getting up there in age, like 30, 31. Like, if he doesn't come back in like a crazy James Harrison kind of way, like this could be the end of it for him.
Yeah.
Notable arrivals in terms of free agency. Tackle Ricky Wagner, guard TJ Lang, famous Targaryen from Green Bay. Defensive tackle Akeem Spence, defensive end Cornelius Washington, cornerback DJ Hayden, linebacker, I put LV, linebacker Paul Warlow, who before the draft was probably going to replace DeAndre Levy in the middle, but now because of the draft it probably won't happen. He'll probably be backing up their first round pick. Spoilers. Tight end Darren Fells, and then running back Matt Asiata. Not a super huge pick Asiata was, but I mean just because he came from the Vikings and was like Peterson's backup for God knows how long, I thought that was interesting to put in there.
Yeah.
Notable re-signings as of, I think it was yesterday, or the day before that, Matt Stafford got paid.
Big contract guy.
Yeah, so Derek Carr got to hold I'm the highest paid player in the NFL like baton for 3 months, and then just handed it off to Stafford.
I've been saying for months that timing was so important. I'm so glad that we got ours done before Stafford, because Stafford broke the bank.
Tackle Cornelius Lucas. It'll be interesting going forward, seeing how much they're going to be able to pay these players now that Stafford has taken so much money.
Exactly.
And it's going up there, and I would argue that that's part of the reasons why the Colts have been so hamstrung, is that Andrew Luck, and this was before they raised the salary cap. Andrew Luck took a huge contract. It was just they gave him so much money, and I imagine that really hamstrung them in terms of being able to re-sign players and then attract free agents. That and Ryan Grigson was a terrible GM.
Yeah,
but I'm not going to get into that. Like I said, tackle Cornelius Lucas, and then they re-signed their long snapper Don Mulbach. Long snappers make me sad now. I'm sorry. I just
gonna sting for a while.
Yeah.
So the draft, I think, pretty indicative of what their needs were. Fairly defense-heavy draft, right from the jump, actually.
Yeah, like I said, Paul Willow was originally supposed to be the starting middle linebacker, but they went with Gerard Davis out of Florida. Who pretty interesting because there was a huge run on quarterbacks quarterbacks in the draft before this, with Mahomes going, with Trubisky going, with Deshaun Watson going, and then all the wide receivers ended up going. They ended up having the pick of who they wanted in terms of defensive players, because players like Reuben Foster were still there, like Gerard Davis was still there. They ended up going with him. Great linebacking prospect, in my opinion. He's going to step right in and play immediately. Round 2, they went with Tez Tabor, cornerback out of Florida. Really big guy. He's going to play opposite of Slay. I don't know if he's going to play immediately. Based on the depth chart and the way that I've been watching them, it looks like they're going to start him off as a backup. He's a big guy. He's over 6 feet, so you can't necessarily stick him in the slot to learn. But once he gets up to speed, maybe halfway through the year or definitely into next year, they're going to have two fairly scary, fairly fast, over 6 foot corners. Which, when you look at like their main competition in the division, the Green Bay Packers, largely a passing team, they have Jordy Nelson, who isn't like a large man. Like I want to say he's like 6'1" at most. And you have Randall Cobb, who tends to be fairly small and shifty. So they're going to have the height to cover these guys. And as long as they can keep up, they're actually positioning themselves to be the counter to Green Bay. Which, I mean, when Green Bay's been taking you up and down that division for 20+ years, it seems, with Favre, both, and Rodgers, you got to do something, man.
Yeah.
Round 3, and I think they're going to hit on all 3 of these picks. If not, they've already hit, because you've seen stuff they've done in the preseason. But Kenny Galladay, wide receiver out of Northern Illinois, big-bodied guy, not necessarily the fastest guy, but I think he really gives them a lot of size that they were needing in terms of their wide receiving core, because Golden Tate is a really good short to intermediate guy. You have Marvin Jones Jr., who came on around the middle of last year and then kind of dropped off. But luckily enough, Golden Tate kind of picked up the slack. But he's a speed guy, so he's gonna be in the good on those deep routes. This guy, I can see them throwing types of like fades and stuff like that while they get him up to speed and get him running that NFL route tree. But I think he's also going to be very interesting for their wide receiver core. Jalen Reeves-Maben, linebacker out of Tennessee. From what I understand, more of a pass rushing linebacker, so more than likely going to be like a will side linebacker, if not transition him into something like a hand down defensive end linebacking kind of thing, which is really popular now in the NFL. Michael Roberts, tight end out of Toledo. He could be a two-way player as far as tight end, but he's, from what I understand, has better hands. Eric Ebron really has never blossomed or flourished into what they were hoping. So I mean, I feel like they're just going to start taking flyers on tight ends because there's nothing else they can do. I mean, when they have that many weapons between Theo Riddick and Amir Abdullah in the backfield, Marvin Jones Jr., Golden Tate, and possibly Kenny Golladay, they don't necessarily need to feed it to the tight end like they would have had to a couple years ago. Jamal Agnew, cornerback out of San Diego in round 5, both in round 6. Jeremiah Ledbetter, defensive end out of Arkansas. Brad Kaya, cornerback out of Miami. It'll be interesting because they did run a more college-esque scheme down there in Miami, but I mean, knowing who's came out of the U in terms of players and in terms of quarterbacks, he's their leading passer in history. So I think that has to be respected at least. I don't know if they necessarily see him as the up and comer to Stafford, especially with them paying Stafford and Stafford being the age he is.
Got that contract, and Stafford, who's been in the league forever, is still only 27 years old.
He was part of. I want to say he was the last or one of the last ones that
was the last one before the rookie pay scale. Yeah,
before the like you said, I think they had the players thing or whatever. I'm looking for the word.
CBA.
Yeah, the collective bargaining agreement, which restructured all the pay. So he was the last one to get really paid. And it's good that they got him so young, because it's one of the issues one of the things that I have a kind of a hang up with Carson Wentz is that he's 24. It's possible we might get less good years out of him than we could out of somebody else. But I mean, at that point, that's just picking and choosing.
Yeah.
But Brad Kye is going to be really, really interesting. I saw him on the Gruden's QB camp. He seemed to be a really bright guy. If in need of development in terms of his mechanics, probably, but definitely an interesting prospect. And then the last pick they had in round 7 was Pat O'Connor, defensive end out of Eastern Michigan. So I haven't really talked about the Lions' prospects, really just kind of ran through a lot of transactions and stuff like that. How do you feel about the Lions?
So I was high on the Lions last year. I cooled on them this year.
I don't think I've ever been high on the Lions.
Well, my issue with them is I knew the Stafford contract was coming. It was just a matter of when, and I knew it was going to tie up a lot of money. With free agents departing and them seeming to really look towards the draft to fill their holes, I feel like they're kind of going through a soft rebuild. Not like a full rebuild. They're still trying to compete, and they can compete. They obviously proved that last year. They made the playoffs.
That was very fluky, and we haven't even talked about that, to where they had 8
so many comebacks,
8 last minute comebacks, or last minute drives, or between but basically they were the last scorer.
They had a lesser version of the Raiders season. They won less games, but they won them the same way.
Yeah, they were just coming back. So I mean, you can't expect to do that again.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't expect them to do that again. Like I said, soft rebuild right now. I really, truthfully, with their schedule, with their situation, I see them going 4-12, 3-13 this year. I see them definitely regressing. I think it's a temporary thing. I think within a year or two they'll be a legitimate playoff team based on the talent that they've got and based on how this draft goes. But yeah, I see them taking a pretty steep drop off from last year.
Jeez. No, yeah, I think that's a hot take. Truthfully, that's among the most out on a limb for a team that I've seen you go. Because I mean, this was a playoff team last year.
Yeah, a team that I was high on last year.
And you think what has specifically caused, or what would specifically cause such a discrepancy in wins between last year and this year?
Well, part of it is because I have the Packers going 15-1 or 13-3. Those wins are they're 6-0 in the division. They're taking 2 wins from the Lions. They're not going to split the series there.
Okay.
I know that my predictions on here would make it seem otherwise, but I'm not as sour on the Bears as the rest of the world is.
The Jets are going 0-16.
Yeah. But I mean, the Bears could be surprising. The Vikings, really, though, I think the Vikings are going to outshine them this year. And I mean, teams like the Packers and the Vikings aren't going to get those wins without getting division wins. And I think the Lions are going to be the ones to lose out in that transaction. So there's 2 to 4 losses immediately right there for the Lions compared to last year. And then just the general strength of the NFC right now. They have a tough schedule this year. So with them losing some pretty key free agents like Anquan Bolden, I mean, he's an old man, but he was still a bomb-ass receiver last year. And the fact that they went out and got DJ Hayden on defense, who is a slot corner at best, a corner that we drafted 10th overall just a few years ago. And that's who the Lions went out and got to shore up their secondary depth. So I don't know that their defense is going to be any better unless their draft picks push them to that level. And Darius Slay's not going to carry that secondary by himself. So I think that with them leaning more on younger guys this year, that they're probably going to lose a few more games this year. I just went a little extreme. Like I said, as my picks have all, it's pretty top heavy, bottom heavy. There's not a lot of mediocrity in the league, and
there's no parity according to you.
No, I mean there's some teams that end up in those weird little middle ground places like the Eagles, but the 6-10 to 9-7 Eagles. I mean there are some teams that are in the middle. It's just the Lions are one of those teams that went the wrong direction this year for me.
I have them. I don't even know what to do. I have them going 9-7, repeating their record last year, going 4-2. If anything, I think they're more shored up. I guess the word isn't better because I don't think they're better. I do think they won some pretty fluky games out there. There's at least 2 or 3 that they shouldn't have won, that they had no business winning, that some craziness happened at the end. But that being said, that's just the game of football. Marvin Jones Jr. is going to have another year to really progress. He kind of came on at the end of last year, and they figured out that he was their only deep threat. They just basically had to sit on him because it's not like they had Anquan or Golden Tate going long. So they just sat on him after he had his one or 2 games. I think he's going to be able to take more tops off of defense, especially with Golladay there. They lost Amir Abdullah, if you remember correctly, last year at the very beginning. So they may have more of a semblance of a running game going forward. They actually ended up spending some money on their line, so their line's going to be better, which I think is going to help with their running game. Or if they are going to have a running game, that is going to be a large reason. Because they had no Amir Abdullah. Theo Riddick is their other running back, but he is definitely more of a pass-catching back. So that left it all on Stafford. And, I mean, it was good that they were able to get 2 positive wins, basically on the strength of Stafford's arm, but they can't do that all the time. And I think that they will be able to be more balanced this year than they were last year. That won't translate to more wins, but I feel like it will translate to more convincing wins, I guess is the best way to say it. Otherwise, on the defense, I'm a little bit more high on the picks than you are. I think Tabor's going to end up being at least a good 2. I think that linebacker they got, Gerard Davis, is going to be fantastic. I've already talked about Golladay 3 or 4 times because I think he's going to be a really good wide receiver. And all the other ones are good in terms of shoring up depth. They were looking for positions that they actually needed because it's not like they had huge holes really anywhere. They just had a few missing pieces. And you're one to argue more than I am that Matt Stafford is an elite quarterback. So, I mean, if he's going to be an elite quarterback, if he's going to get paid like he should be able to at least will this team to 9 wins, which is where I have them. They have them going 4-2 in the division. Unfortunately, on the outside looking in terms of playoffs, but I mean, Stafford's got to go out there and just make it happen, because going forward, his team's not going to get any better based on the money that he's making. So, I mean, this is the year. This very could be the year. If it's not this year, then it's going to be very rough going forward for the next little bit, I think.
See, I think this will be the stumble year, and then next year will be like the takeoff year, probably.
If they're going to stumble, it's probably going to be next year.
Yeah. On next to the Minnesota Vikings, who were 8-8 last year, good for 5-3 at home, 3-5 on the road. Had a very interesting year. Their quarterback situation, needless to say, finished third in the NFC North. Did not make the playoffs, and had a fairly active offseason, I would say. Notable departures: tackle Matt Khalil, who is a Panther now. Tight end Rhett Ellison, who is a Giant now. Cornerback Captain Munnerlyn, who still has the best name in the NFL, went back to the Panthers. Him and Julius Peppers are reunited down there now. Wide receiver Cordell Patterson is now a Raider. Running back Adrian Peterson is now a Saint. Punter Jeff Locke is now a Colt. Guard Andre Smith is now a Bengal. Running back Matt Asiata is a Lion.
Yes.
And linebacker Chad Greenway
Retired.
went to the retirement home. So
Went to the retirement home.
Lots of departures there. Lots of big names that are gone. Notable arrivals. It's a little bit shorter of a list. Interesting nonetheless. Tackle Riley Reif. Tackle Mike Remmers. Running back Latavius Murray. Defensive end Dayton Jones, quarterback Case Keenum, and wide receiver Michael Floyd. So they offset some of those departures with some free agency. But also between re-signings and the draft, I'm actually a little bit more excited about the Vikings this year than I was last year.
They ended up paying Adam Thielen, who ended up coming on the end of last year. It's pretty interesting. Picked up Anthony Barr's fifth-year option. And they signed Terrence Newman, who I looked and I was like, this man's still in the league? He's 38. He's a 38-year cornerback, and he's still in the league, still getting paid.
Nobody's 38 at corner, ever.
He is.
Turns out.
But yeah, that's really interesting. They also, just like the Packers, didn't have a first round pick. Ended up getting Dalvin Cook with the 41st pick overall in the second round. Running back out of Florida State, really interesting. Could have, he was talked about in the top 3 running backs, but ended up just sliding down there for real reasons unknown. It was Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, and then him. And for a while, it was Leonard Fournette, Dalvin Cook, and then Christian McCaffrey. And him and McCaffrey ended up doing a switch. Main issues are just that shoulder. He had a history of shoulder injuries. But good pass catching back, can run between the tackles. It'll be a good replacement for Adrian Peterson. Him combined with Latavius Murray, if Latavius Murray can actually start the season healthy, which he has not been as of late, should be a pretty interesting 1-2 punch, along with our boy Kevin Vickman.
Yeah, the return of the great one, Kevin Vickman in the house.
Round 3, Pat Elflein, center out of Ohio State. The third lineman that they ended up getting last year, because you just saw the complete shit show that they had as far as an offensive line last year. So they went out, got some stuff, figured that they needed to draft line at least twice in this draft, and you'll see that with this pick, and then a couple, or then a one going down further. Jaleel Johnson, defensive tackle out of Iowa. Ben Gedeon. I don't even know how to say his name. Gedeon.
Yeah.
Linebacker out of Michigan. Rodney Adams, wide receiver out of South Florida. Danny Isadora, guard Miami. The other linemen that they got. Bucky Hodges, tight end out of Virginia Tech. Stacey Cole, wide receiver out of Miami. They're going to have like seven round picks, so bear with me. Of this next one, I don't know how to say. I want to say Afidi Odenigbo. Okay, that one. Defensive end out of Northwestern. Elijah Lee, linebacker out of Kansas State. And Jack, I want to just say Taco. I don't know if that's right. It's Toco, Toco, quarterback out of NC State.
Can only have one taco in the NFL.
Yes, his name is Taco Charlton.
Yes, second best name in the NFL. Yeah, I mean, interesting. I don't know how you feel about the Vikings, although all things considered.
They did go out and get, like I said, the big thing that they ended up doing, despite like letting half of their team leave, is that they ended up going out and identifying line and saying our line was the reason why we were shit last year. Our defense kept us in the games, and Sam Bradford did what Sam Bradford's going to do. And the reason why Sam Bradford didn't do better is because he was on his back.
Yeah.
So I do think that they're going to be at least as good as they were last year.
Yeah, their O-line was definitely a problem, but Sam Bradford actually didn't look bad in their offensive scheme. They went out and they improved their offensive line, and a lot of their departures were either depth players or older players. So I think that they didn't really lose a whole lot per se. I mean, they lost a lot of names, but they didn't lose a lot of talent.
Still have Xavier Rhodes. Still have Anthony Barr. I think Everett Griffin is his name.
Yeah, they still have one of the best defenses in the league right now. And they made their offense better. And I'm not saying they're going to be world beaters this year.
Stephon Diggs has another year to learn.
Exactly. I mean, this could be his coming out year. Another year of Sam Bradford within a system.
I mean, he actually, I think a lot of the reason why he ended up doing as well as he did is because of Norv Turner basically just leaving, ended up giving the reins to Pat Shurmur, who was his offensive coordinator with the Rams, and then later was the offensive coordinator with the Eagles under Chip Kelly when he was there. So there's some understanding between them because they've been in multiple places at they've been in the same place multiple times in their careers.
Yeah. So, I mean, all those factors considered, I actually do have the Vikings improving to 9-7 this year. Unfortunately, that 9-7 is not going to get them into the playoffs, but it's a step in the right direction. And I mean, if their draft picks pan out, their offense could be just that little bit better, and their defense could genuinely be top 5. I don't mean, who's to say? But this is definitely a team that I don't think regressed. I think that they held steady at worst.
I have them going 7-9. It's good enough for 2-4 in the division, 11th in the NFC. Not a bad team, but I feel like there's only so much you can do with Sam Bradford as your quarterback. Stephon Diggs seems to be, from what I understand, more of a vertical route catching.
Yeah, he's a burner.
Yeah, so
go.
Sam Bradford's not gonna. That's not Sam Bradford's game. That was more of Norv Turner's thing. And you see how Stephon Diggs sort of fell off once Norv Turner left and changed the scheme, and Pat Shurmur ended up going to a more quick passing scheme, which lends itself better to Bradford and players like Adam Thielen and players like Kyle Rudolph, and hopefully that'll do well with Dalvin Cook, who can catch the ball out of the backfield. But I don't know if that's necessarily going to benefit one of their better wide receivers in Stephon Diggs. Granted, I mean, their defense didn't get any worse. Arguably, it got younger, which can transition. It can result into better, usually. But for whatever reason, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it with the Vikings. Their line was terrible last year. Hopefully they ended up shoring it up. I do agree with the moves that they made. They needed to end up going out and getting good players on the line, and ended up adding more depth, because the thing that they lacked last year was not a good line. It was a line with depth, because they were just hit with 2 or 3 just injuries, bam, boom, bam, boom. And they just lost all semblance of any sort of run that they had, because they were 5-0, 6-0.
Yeah.
6 weeks into the season, and then they just fell off. So I don't necessarily see them going on that kind of a run. I do see that their defense is going to keep them in some games, but when you're in a division with Matt Stafford and Aaron Rodgers, they're going to get like you're going to take your lumps, I think, and I just don't see it from them. Like I want to believe in the Vikings, but the same way, I just don't. I don't see it. I see it with the Buccaneers. I see it with the Titans. I don't see it with them.
Yeah, this is another.
They're
team
not
again.
inspiring.
They're a year or two away. They're enough to be a nuisance. Although I do have them going 4-2 in the division. But yeah, they're a team that they exist as a spoiler. They're a couple years away from true competition. And last but definitely least, we have probably the tiniest blurb we've had yet in our preparation documentation for the podcast. We have the Chicago Bears bearing down last year with a whopping 3-13.
Unbearable record.
Yeah. They got all three of their wins at home. 0-8 on the road. They were fourth in the NFC North, obviously. This is a team that is trusting the process, it seems. Notable departures, which is just looking at this list. Right from the top, quarterback Brian Hoyer gone, 49ers. Arguably the best quarterback on their roster left. Also, quarterback Jay Cutler, who is now a Dolphin. I just said that to get a reaction.
That's disrespectful.
I love Jay Cutler.
Not a big Jay Cutler fan, but still.
I love Jay Cutler. I had to make the joke, though. Cutler's now a Dolphin. Took his talents to South Beach. Wide receiver Alshon Jeffrey signed with the Eagles. Defensive end Cornelius Washington to the Lions, just so they can have a little bit of their own incest as well. Guard Ted Larson is now a Dolphin as well. Quarterback Matt Barkley signed with the 49ers. I guess him and Brian Hoyer are going to have tea parties in San Francisco together.
Going to touch tips.
Yeah, they're going to touch tips. Tight end Logan Paulson is also a 49er, so they're just funneling talent just out to the Bay. Just go, 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 go.
Notable arrivals, quarterback Giraffe Man, Mike Glennon, who was thought to be before the draft their starting quarterback, and I was like, how are they going to do that? How are they going to put a giraffe in pads and a helmet and have him throw the football? He's got hooves. Come on. That doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense to me. $16 million for an animal from Africa?
That's the most American thing you've said all day.
That's wildlife out there. Like, don't put that giraffe out there. He's going to die.
Mike Glennon, who already has publicly said that he feels like he's more or less usurped already.
Yeah, like he should have seen it coming. He's a giraffe. He can see high.
Yeah, he's got that distance vision. God, Jesus.
Tight end Deion Sims, cornerback Marcus Cooper, safety Quentin Demps, who is halfway decent, wide receiver Marcus Wheaton from the Steelers, cornerback Prince Amukamara, former Giant Great, wide receiver Victor Cruz, was trying to hit up the Giants but didn't end up getting there. Mark Sanchez, wide receiver Kendall Wright from the Titans, and then running back Benny Cunningham from the Rams. Notable re-signings, Connor Barth, their kicker, ended up re-signing them. All of these other ones tend to be just depth for the most part, but C.J. Wilson played a couple years for the Packers and then another couple years for the Raiders before ending up here. Deontay Thompson, wide receiver, and then both linebackers Christian Jones and Sam Acho were signed. Ended up being semi to large contributors at some point for the Bears last year or the last couple years.
Bears also owner of, I think, might be the smallest draft I've ever seen.
Yeah, they didn't have much in the terms of picks, but that's what happens when you mismanage a franchise.
Yeah.
Round 2, probably the biggest pick, probably the pick we're going to spend the most time on. But I'm sorry, Round 1, pick 2, my fault. Mitchell Trubisky, quarterback out of North Carolina.
Go Heels.
I thought you were going to say go hard, and I was like, I'm about to.
Also, yes.
I I completely went off on the Chiefs for drafting Patrick Mahomes with the 10th pick. You have so many options at 2. You literally have all of the players but one to pick from. That's how the draft works. You have so many issues everywhere on your roster. Like, you've got issues on the D line, you've got issues in your backfield, you've got issues in your on your line, you've got issues in your linebacking core, you've got issues in your secondary, and you just paid $16 million guaranteed to a giraffe, and you're gonna pick that position?
Sure looks that way. It sure looks that way.
Mitchell Trubisky better be the second coming, or the Chicago Bears are going to be like this for at least 5 years, because you don't just pick a quarterback. Like, it's one of those things where, like, they're probably going to trot him out already because he's had a decent preseason against the 2s and the 3s, mind you, against the 2s and the 3s, and he hasn't put up, like, crazy numbers, but he's had a decent preseason, so they're probably just going to put him out there and see what happens. But he doesn't even have a wide receiver to pass it to now that Cameron Meredith has gone down, tore his ACL. So now he's probably going to be looking at 8-man boxes with Jordan Howard. Jordan Howard's probably going to get stuffed to no end, probably have an Adrian Peterson-esque season, like Adrian Peterson was looking at for the last, like, 2 or 3 years that he saw in Minnesota. And he's just gonna get destroyed. I mean, he's athletic. He's good on the rollouts. You've seen him make a couple plays on the move. But I don't know if he's a better option than Mike Glennon. When it really comes down to it, like, listen, I know that you paid Mike Glennon all this money and you feel like Mitchell Trubisky may be the next quarterback. This is a really weak class for quarterback. And what I would do, now that you've stuck yourself in this position, is put Glennon out there. He's basically going to be the sacrificial lamb. We all figured this out the moment that he signed. Like, unless he just completely turned it on. And, like, turned into, like, Derek Anderson for a year for the Bears, for example. There was no way that, like, Mike Glennon was going to be, like, the next great Chicago Bears quarterback. Like, he wasn't going to usurp Sexy Rexy, as far as I saw. But I just put Glennon out there, let him take his hits. If his confidence gets shattered, it's fine. It doesn't matter. It's just a giraffe.
Yeah. Send him to the zoo. He'll be fine. He'll make giraffe friends. They'll have giraffe parties.
But what they're going to do is they're going to put Trubisky out there. He's going to look awful. They're going to sit on him for a couple of years. And then he probably won't turn out all that well. And we won't know if it's Trubisky's fault, whether he got put out there early, whether or not he had no stuff around him. It's just not smart. You're seeing the same exact thing happen with Blake Bortles out there in Jaguars. Now that they've reversed course once again. So I don't know. Like, this really upsets me, and I'm not even a Bears fan.
No, I mean this
I have no stake in the Bears as a fan.
A once proud franchise that's definitely being run into the ground.
They fired Lovie Smith.
Yeah, after 10-6 season. 10-6 got him fired.
Same thing with the Buccaneers, but we're not going to even go into that.
It's
been downhill since then.
Yeah.
Well, Adam Gase, they did fine with Adam Gase.
Yeah,
and
they
Jay
went
Cutler.
like 11-5 with Adam Gase. So I mean,
but yeah, I mean, Trubisky, as far as I'm seeing, is in the second coming. They had a lot of options. They could have gone with Solomon Thomas, who would have ended up being a great player. They could have gone with, Mike Williams, who nobody could have known was going to have a back issue, but I mean, explosive wide receiver. They could have gone with like Lattimore, cornerback. Like, they could have gone with so many other players, and they pick a player that probably won't end up contributing all that much, if any, this year. It's disgusting.
They also had 4 other draft picks, if you'd like to run through them real quick.
You wouldn't know it by the sound of it. It sounds like they just drafted Trubisky, and they were just like, we win, guys, and they fucking left.
Yeah, they just went home, ate deep dish pizza, and went to bed.
Round 2, 45th pick overall, Adam Shaheen, tight end out of Ashland, who they think could probably be a two-way player. They ended up paying a lot of money to Deion Sims. Looking at their wide receiver pool, I think they're going to be playing a lot of 2 tight end sets now. Round 4, both these picks here are actually going to be round 4. Eddie Jackson, safety out of Alabama, and then Tariq Cohen, running back out of North Carolina A&T, because that was a position that you needed. And then round 5 was Jordan Morgan, lineman out of Kutztown. Doesn't really have a specific pick, more of a developmental player. But yeah, they had five picks, of which they drafted a quarterback that they don't need and a running back, which is, I mean, I guess. I guess
they could have traded the number 2 pick. Surely they could have gotten 3 to 5 picks for it.
I don't think anybody was wanting to draft up was wanting to trade up into the 2. But if they were and they weren't listening to it, they're wrong. Yeah. Because I don't think Trubisky's the guy. Like, I feel like Mayholm is probably going to have a better record just by the fact that by proxy of Kansas City being a better team. Yeah. Yes.
So all that being said, I don't think that there's going to be much surprise to our predictions for the Bears season. I have them
16-0.
Hot take. Hot take.
No, I did not know. I did not know.
He locked it in. 16-0. Vegas, everybody. Vegas. I have them going 2-14, and I'm not even sure how they got those 2 wins. I'm assuming that they play the 49ers and the Jets this year.
I have them going 3-13, also going 2-4 in the division. Probably beating like the Lions and the Vikings at one point, because they do not beat the Packers. That's a given. It is known that they don't beat the Packers. 3-13, essentially just repeating what they did last year. Like, if anything, this team is more devoid of talent at the moment. They might have been able to sneak a few games, but like I said, I feel like Cameron Meredith going down is like the last nail in the coffin as far as that offense goes. Like, they basically look like the Vikings when they had people like Matt Castle starting for them, or Christian Ponder starting for them, where it was Adrian Peterson or bust. And I think that's really how it is. It's that Jordan Howard or bust, because they don't have anybody to pass it to, and they have no semblance of any sort of like good or decent defense. It's just gonna be bad as a Bears fan this year, man. And I'm sorry.
Bear down.
Bear down.
So that's going to do it for our off-season series. We'll be coming back next week with an actual Week 1 episode with our predictions for the Week 1 matchups. And other than that, that's going to do it for today. Thank you for listening. Good night, everybody.
Yep. Rate, comment, share, subscribe, and do all that shit.
Also, let us know how you feel about our new logo.
Fuck Blake Bortles.
Fuck Blake Bortles.